The snow fell quietly on the battered village, covering broken walls, shattered roofs, and burned-out vehicles in a white sheet that almost looked like peace. Almost. For months, the place had known nothing but thunder, shells, rifles, grenades, and the cries that followed. It was the winter of war, and the front line ran straight through the middle of this forgotten place, dividing it into two halves, one patrolled by British troops, the other guarded by Americans. Though they wore different flags on their sleeves, their purpose was the same: to hold the line, to fight, to survive. And yet, on this bitterly cold December morning, something happened that neither side would ever forget. Something so small, so fragile, that it carried the power to silence guns. The child in the snow. Private Daniel Cooper of the British Army leaned against a crumbled wall, his rifle slung over his shoulder. He had barely slept, his breath hanging in the frozen air as he scanned the empty street. The war had hardened him, but his eyes still carried the softness of a 21-year-old who hadn't been ready for this kind of world. He muttered under his breath, "Another day, another fight." That's when he saw movement, a flicker of color against the blanket of white. At first, his instinct screamed enemy scout, but then he blinked and realized what it was. A child. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, bundled in a coat far too thin for the weather, her cheeks red from the cold. Her tiny hands clutched a ragged teddy bear missing an ear. She stumbled through the snow, her lips trembling, but her eyes, wide, frightened, hopeful, were fixed on something invisible, something beyond war. Daniel's heart clenched. He whispered, "Dear God." He stepped forward carefully, his boots crunching on the snow. But before he could call out, he heard another sound, the distinct metallic click of a rifle bolt from across the ruined street. On the opposite side, Sergeant Jack Reynolds of the U.S. Army had also spotted the child, and just like Daniel, his training screamed at him to stay alert. Jack was older, hardened by 2 tours, a man who'd seen too much loss to believe in miracles. But the sight of that little girl, clutching her toy in a war zone, broke through the armor he carried inside. Their eyes met across the divide, British soldier and American soldier, their rifles hanging loosely at their sides, both frozen not by fear of each other, but by the sight of innocence in the snow. The silent decision. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. The distant booms of artillery faded. Even the icy wind seemed to hush. Daniel raised his hand slightly, palm open, not toward the American but toward the child. A silent signal. "Don't shoot. Not today." Jack hesitated. He knew what his orders were. No trust, no hesitation, not even with allies divided by sectors. Yet something inside him, something human, pushed back. He lowered his rifle, just an inch. The little girl stopped walking and looked at them both, confused, trembling. And then, despite everything, she smiled. It was the smallest smile, barely there, but it lit her face like the sun breaking through storm clouds. And that was enough. Guns lowered, hearts lifted. Daniel stepped out from cover, slowly, deliberately, his arms raised to show he carried no threat. On the other side, Jack did the same. 2 soldiers from 2 different nations, trained to fight, now walking toward the same fragile soul. The girl's lips quivered. "Mama," she whispered in broken English. Daniel shook his head softly, his chest aching. He knelt down in the snow, his voice gentle. "No, love, but you're safe. We've got you." Jack reached her second, pulling off his gloves to wrap her tiny hands in his. They were ice cold, shaking. He took off his scarf and wound it around her neck. Daniel quickly pulled a chocolate bar from his pocket, a ration he'd been saving, and offered it. The girl's eyes widened, and for the first time in who knows how long, she giggled. The sound of it, light, pure, unbroken, was like a melody neither soldier had heard in years. That laugh stopped the war. The moment that changed everything. Nearby soldiers peeked out, rifles ready, confused by the sight before them. But when they truly saw, they too began to lower their weapons. British and American helmets leaned out of bunkers and windows, watching silently as the 2 soldiers knelt beside the child. It was as though an invisible command had been given, not from generals, not from governments, but from something higher. A human order. Protect the child. Protect the smile. For the next few minutes, the battlefield became something else. A ceasefire of the heart. Daniel looked at Jack, and for the first time, smiled. Jack smirked back, shaking his head. "Guess war doesn't stand a chance against her, huh? The gift of humanity." The girl ate the chocolate slowly, her tiny face lighting up with joy. Then, from her little coat pocket, She pulled out something crumpled, a drawing. It was made with broken crayons on the back of an old letter, showing a house, a tree, and 3 stick figures holding hands. She pointed to the picture, then to herself, then to the sky. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. Jack swallowed hard, looking away. She had lost her family. And yet, she still drew them. Still believed in them. Still smiled. Jack murmured, "If she can hold on to hope, maybe we can too." Daniel whispered back, "For her sake, we must." The unwritten truce. Word spread quickly down the line, "There's a child." No one fired. No one moved. For hours that day, the guns were silent. British and American soldiers shared rations, passed blankets, and stood guard, not against each other, but together, watching over the little girl. Someone found a red ribbon in a supply bag. They tied it in her hair. Someone else gave her boots that were 3 sizes too big. She laughed again, stumbling, and every hardened soldier smiled like they hadn't in years. That night, around a fire built from broken wood, Daniel and Jack sat shoulder to shoulder, the girl asleep between them, clutching her teddy bear. The crackle of flames replaced the roar of artillery. Jack whispered, "Never thought I'd see the day a smile could end a battle." Daniel nodded, staring at the sleeping child. Maybe that's the only battle worth winning. The legacy of a smile. The war didn't end that winter. Battles raged on. Men fell. The world continued its march of violence. But in that one village, on that one day, humanity returned. Years later, veterans from both sides would tell the story, not of victories, not of medals, but of the little girl who stopped the war. No one remembered her name. Some said she was taken to safety by aid workers, others whispered she was adopted by a family far away. But everyone remembered the smile. Because it wasn't just her smile. It was the reminder of why they fought, why they endured, why they hoped. It was the proof that even in the darkest winters of mankind, a single spark of innocence could bring warmth. Final message. The story of that day lives on, passed from soldier to soldier, father to son, mother to daughter. Not as history written in books, but as memory written in hearts. And so, when someone asks, can kindness survive war? Can humanity endure hate? The soldiers who were there smile softly and answer, yes, because once, on a frozen battlefield, British and American soldiers stopped the war, for a child's smile.